you view this as a parental rights issue at all?
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, there's no such thing as parental rights. In Canada, there are parental responsibilities. And in Canadian family law, the primary responsibility of parents is to support and affirm their kids. Children have rights in Canada, and these kind of policies restrict the rights that children have in Canada.
Well, there you have it, folks. You have no rights to your children as a parent, and your only responsibility is to affirm and support their crazy ideas, regardless of what they are. Now, to me, this kind of gives me a very World Economic Forum type of vibe of Klaus Schwab, of the you will own nothing and be happy, because apparently you're not even entitled to your children in the sense that the state will handle it for you, and you should just be a placeholder in the meantime. And that's what today's video is going to be about, is that everybody's still losing their mind over Danielle Smith's gender identity policies and how she hasn't wavered from it, she hasn't backed down, and now even Pierre Poilievre has somewhat come out and kind of supported it in his own way without being too direct. He kind of was a little bit vague, but yeah, outside of that, everyone still seems to think that this is also some sort of right-wing MAGA thing.
The final thing that it does is it provides the Prime Minister with more proof that you can link, Premier Smith, Pierre Poilievre, Tucker Carlson, MAGA conservatives, and it no longer becomes a stretch. It becomes actually a very simple equation for people to understand. And that is not something that I think most Canadians want to see. It's not the kind of politics they want to see in Canada.
There's a certain segment of, in particular, American society, which has prioritized these issues. And I think that, I'm going to be very blunt, the Conservative Party has decided that there's some gain for them at the provincial level with the United Conservatives in Alberta and at the national level in appealing to that far-right constituency.
Which again, I mentioned in my previous video, it's as if just because parents care and they don't want their children to be making poor decisions, you're somehow now right-wing or MAGA. I don't quite get it. Now, as I mentioned, Pierre did get questioned on this topic the other day after he had made a few announcements, and they really wanted to know what he thought about Danielle Smith's policies and where he stands with the Conservatives on this topic. And this was his response.
What do you think? What do you think?
I want to know your position.
What is your own party policy? It's your own party policy. At party convention.
I think we should protect the rights of parents to make their own decisions.
What does it mean?
With regards to their children. And I believe that adults should have the freedom to make any decision they want about their bodies.
But minors.
How about children?
Surgeries and medical interventions for minors, as your own party members suggested.
Medical interventions like what?
That is the language that your party
What medical
used.
interventions?
Well, you would have to ask your party members.
What medical interventions?
Such as puberty blockers and hormone
For minors?
Yeah. Yes.
Irreversible? You're talking about
I'd like to understand your position.
I want to be clear. I just want to be clear.
For minors.
Puberty blockers for minors?
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
I think that we should protect children and
What
their
does that
ability
mean?
to make adult decisions when they're adults.
So you
that
think
will protect-
only adults should make you said yes? Just to be clear, you said yes, only adults should take puberty blockers?
I think we should protect children, let them make adult decisions when they become adults.
So that
you do support age
so that means
restrictions?
you are against puberty blockers for kids under the age of 18. Is that
Yes.
unclear? Okay.
Now, even though I'm happy Pierre said yes, that he believes that puberty blockers should be banned, I wish he had just come out and said that from the beginning instead of tiptoeing around and doing this little dance with the media of, oh, if you're old enough, blah, 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 blah. Just say what you mean. But again, he's been getting quite a bit of backlash now since making that statement. And Justin Trudeau came out guns blazing towards Pierre soon after this when he was talking to the press as well. Didn't even let them ask their questions. He just came in and started talking about trans youth.
Prime Minister, on pharmacare legislation, how is that going?
Trans kids are 5 times more likely in this country to attempt suicide. What Mr. Poilievre and Ms. Smith are proposing is to take away the rights of parents and their kids to make the right choices for them with their doctors.
Now, I don't know if Trudeau didn't get the memo from the NDP, but apparently parents don't have rights regardless if Pierre has this decision or not. But as we saw, this NDP member comes out, starts talking to the press, and he says some of the wackiest stuff that I have ever heard on air.
I'm here today representing the NDP caucus and expressing our concern about the dangerous and harmful remarks of the Conservative leader with regard to medical treatment for trans kids. We all know what works for trans kids, and that's supporting and affirming their choices. And the use of puberty blockers is a proven medical treatment which allows them time to accommodate who they are becoming, to consult with their families, to consult with their friends. By denying puberty blockers to trans kids, we put them at risk, higher risk of suicide, higher risk of self-harm, and long-term mental health problems for transgender people.
How do you feel that politicians are making these announcements and not doctors and medical professionals?
Well, I want to emphasize that these are announcements, and I'm hopeful that the reaction from the medical community and from concerned Canadians may back off the Alberta Premier on actually implementing these harmful policies. Clearly, we know, as I said, what works for trans kids is to support and affirm them, and a course of treatment with puberty blockers is part of that successful treatment that allows them to grow and develop into who they really are, and it allows families to have a role in that process, and it allows medical professionals to make the decisions.
So this guy's suggestion is to allow children to block their natural puberty, potentially, I guess, let them have cross-sex hormones if they want that as well, to figure out who they are during the most confusing time of their natural lives, as this always happens to kids during puberty. Regardless if you're male or female, it's a confusing time. Things are growing, things are getting hairy, odors are producing, people are looking at you funny and differently, you're getting all these hormones rushing through you. It's a confusing time. So blocking it is not the answer. Going through it is the correct answer. As a lot of these studies have shown, adolescence is a crucial time during gender dysphoria. Whether gender dysphoria persists or desists will probably be determined between the ages of 10 to 13, although some may need more time. Evidence from 10 available prospective follow-up studies from childhood to adolescence indicates that 80% of these children who meet the criteria of gender dysphoria recede out of it with puberty. And instead, many of them who become adolescents after going through puberty just become gay, which is probably the majority of these people who are questioning themselves or being curious with their sexuality or whatever the case may be. It's also a bit of a fad, in my opinion, and as you're going to hear from the next few clips, even one of the journalists asks them this.
Just to take a step back, I mean, I guess many of those conversations stem from the fact that people are looking at the numbers. There are more and more. There's been a dramatic increase in the number of trans kids, and some people are wondering whether there's a fashion, like a trend or something. What do you respond to those who say maybe we have to put a stop to that trend?
So there has been no increase in the number of trans people in Canadian society. What we have made is a more inclusive society where trans people don't kill themselves. And so what we're seeing is people being able to be who they are. There is no such thing as an increase in the number of trans kids going on in this country.
But Stan did indicate that, like, for people...
Because of acceptance, people are able to speak about who they are and to live who they are. It doesn't mean there weren't trans people before. It meant they were forced to stay in the closet or they killed themselves.
Now, this guy's straight out to lunch. I don't know where this guy came from, but she's telling him, no, Stats Canada has come out and said there's been a rise in transgenderism. And he's saying, oh, no, it's because they're not killing themselves as much and they're being more seen. You can kind of tell when somebody feels that they are trans. They make it very apparent. It's not like this has been something that they were hiding all this time. And again, there's been reports that say the number of adolescents contacting specialized gender identity services has risen considerably over the past decade across Europe and North America. So I don't understand how you could say there is no increase when they're talking about increase. But this reminds me of Bill Maher when he asked the simple question, are all the babies in the wrong body?
And finally, new rule, if something about the human race is changing at a previously unprecedented rate, we have to at least discuss it. Broken down over time, the LGBT population of America seems to be roughly doubling every generation. According to a recent Gallup poll, less than 1% of Americans born before 1946, that's Joe Biden's generation, identify that way. 2.6% of boomers do, 4.2% of Gen X, 10.5% of millennials, and 20.8% of Gen Z. Which means if we follow this trajectory, we will all be gay in 2054. And then who's going to buy this chair? I'm just saying that when things change this much, this fast, people are allowed to ask, what's up with that? All the babies are in the wrong bodies?
Now that guy continued going on and on about how people use trans people as scapegoats, some nonsense like that. But I quickly wanted to touch on this article as it states that in Alberta and Edmonton there was school walkouts, and there was a hashtag AB school walkouts that was I guess trending or whatever on Twitter for a bit. But I just want you to take a look at some of these people in these photos. Like, it's all young women who, again, are very impressionable. And even within this article, it talks about a 16-year-old named Aspen who's in grade 10 and has a 13-year-old transgender brother. Now, this is this 16-year-old that the article is talking about, and it says, Servo says that he used to be transgender, but now considers himself gender fluid. He says he goes by he, mostly, but it sometimes changes. Now, what are the odds that you were transgender, and now your 13-year-old, who I'm guessing is your sister, who is identifying as your brother now, didn't look at you and got persuaded by that, and now is saying that they're transgender as well? Yet now you're gender fluid. Like, the chances of both your children being transgender is so tiny, it's ridiculous. But as I mentioned, there was a hashtag going on, and this gentleman here, Dan Phillip on Twitter, decided to gather them all up and put them on here for display. And it says, enrollment, 1,025 students. The ones at this protest for this, only 15. So 1.5% of the school population. And again, what do you see? All girls, pretty much. Another school, 500 students, only 17 showed up, 3.1%. Again, all girls. And Dan was the one who put these squares over all these kids' faces because nobody else decided to, when these are minors. 1,200 students, 16 visible. You rounded it up to 24. Activists are claiming that there's 40, so let's say there's 3.3 here. Again, probably majority young girls. Another 2,207, 28 that are visible. He rounded it up to 40, 1.8% of the student population. Probably still all girls, maybe one or two guys here. And to me, the percentage of lack of support here is very telling, because I don't think there's going to be many parents that are going to be coming to this, because then they'd be giving up their parental rights, right? They'd be cheering that on. And majority of your kids are not trans. It's just a fad. Like when, kids were goth or punk, or, eating disorders were pretty big. Like, a lot of this stuff, unfortunately, affects young women, and they get into this little funk of this mind virus, and this is what happens. They all start thinking that they're this or that. Majority of all these people, again, will look like this. They'll just confused kids. That's it. None of these kids are trans. Yeah, sure, they're there maybe to support a friend or show support, but they're just trying to be polite. And hopefully, again, as they go through puberty, as they start to grow up, they'll just start to realize that this is all a little bit nonsense. And who knows? Maybe some of these girls are gay, and that's fine. If they're lesbians, it's not a big deal. But in today's society, it's not cool to be gay anymore. You either got to be somewhere on this rainbow spectrum, because being just plain old gay isn't cool anymore. So if you're a lesbian and maybe you're a little bit more male presenting, instead of being just a butch lesbian, you might be convinced that actually you're a trans man. And this is what they're pushing. Well, that being said, I want to leave you with this last clip from the former health minister, and listen to what he said throughout this little interview.
Let me just go back to my time as Minister of Health. We did about 30 gender reassignment surgeries a year. So it wasn't very frequent, and we didn't do any as it related to children. This policy that the Premier's put out is saying We don't want to have gender reassignment surgeries for those 17 and under. I think that in talking to 3 individuals that I know earlier today, they are 3 people that have gone through gender reassignment, but they did so as adults, and they would say that they weren't ready to make that kind of decision until they were of the age of majority. And even when they do go through the gender reassignment surgery, the idea that all your problems are solved is it's not true. There are still challenges that they face.
And that right there is a reality that a lot of people need to recognize as well. It's not an end-all be-all. It's not an insta-cure, a miracle cure, whatever you want to call. There's still going to be challenges regardless, and you probably will regret it as we're starting to see a rise in detransitioners. But anyways, that's just my opinion. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about this. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.